Not long ago, I found myself living through a situation straight out of my personal nightmare. The president of our HOA was planted in my driveway, phone in hand, dialing 911, loudly claiming my BMW belonged to her. Her reasoning, according to her: "There's no way I could afford that Madalu, so I must have stolen it." Ironically, the only thing taken that day was her own sense of authority after she made a complete fool of herself. Let me rewind to the moment it started. I pressed the garage door button, the door lifted, and my 2019 blue BMW gleamed under the sunlight. I wasn't going anywhere, just grabbing a torque wrench from my red tailbox. The sunlight caught the hood just right, and for a moment, I felt the satisfaction of hard work paying off. I'd earned it, I'd bought it, and it was mine. I was in my own peaceful garage when a near-splitting shriek came me, not from the street, but from the end of my driveway. I straightened and turned. Standing there, framed in the opening of my garage, was Karen, the HOA president. Those three letters alone can drain the joy from the word home. Karen was immaculate as always. Pink floral cardigan over a crisp white blouse, her short blonde hair perfectly styled. Usually, her smile was her weapon of choice, but today it had vanished, replaced by an expression twisted in pure outrage. Her manicured finger shook as it pointed straight at my car. "Thief!" she bellowed, her voice echoing through the cul-de-sac. Windows cracked open. Neighbors stepped outside, phones already recording. After all, a screaming neighbor is far more entertaining than any TV show. "You stole my car," she shouted. I glanced at my BMW, then at her, then back at the BMW again, processing her performance with the calm detachment of someone who's seen real chaos before, and knowing this wasn't it. This was bad theater. Karen drove a white Lexus SUV. It sat in her driveway every day, shining like a showroom piece. Meanwhile, this blue BMW was legally mine, registered in my name, bought with my money, and covered by my insurance. None of those details mattered to her. It would ruin the scene she was putting on. "That man," she declared to her growing audience, "is a car thief. I'm calling the police." With dramatic flair, she whipped out her phone and dialed, her hands shaking with self-righteous purpose. In her mind, she was the neighborhood's heroic guardian, unmasking the villain in broad daylight. I leaned back against my toolbox and folded my arms. "No sense arguing with a hurricane, you just wait it out." Jane, my wife, appeared in the doorway from the kitchen, spatula in hand. She looked at me, the car, and the yelling HOA president. Without missing a beat, she said, "Evan, what did we agree about stealing cars from the neighbors?" Her tone was mock disappointed. "You've got a problem, honey, we need to get you some help." I couldn't help but smile. Jane knew exactly how to find the humor in these absurd moments. Karen didn't. She shot Jane a glare, then pressed the phone to her ear. "Yes, 911, I'm reporting a grand theft auto in progress." The wait for the police was a broken bar awkward. Karen planted herself at the end of my driveway like a self-appointed guardian of justice. Jane brought me a glass of iced tea, and we sat there watching. Neighbors lost interest and drifted back inside. Finally, a patrol car pulled up. Out stepped two officers and Rex and Vinny. "What's going on, ma'am?" Rex asked, clearly unimpressed. "It answered far too many calls like this before." Karen pointed at me. "Arrest that thief. He stole my brand new BMW. He must have gotten the keys somehow." She spun a whole story, adding one wild guess after another. Rex listened for a bit, then raised a hand to stop her mid-sentence. He and Vinny walked up to me. "Sir, can we speak with you?" "Of course, officers," I replied. "Come on over." They asked if it was my car. I offered to show them the title, registration, and insurance right there in the glove compartment. They checked the paperwork, compared the van on the dash, and radioed it in. "Dispatch confirmed. Registered to Evan Cole. No issues. No reports of theft." Rex exhaled heavily. "Everything checks out, Mr. Cole." Turning to Karen, he said, "Ma'am, the vehicle is his. No crime has been committed." "That's impossible," she protested. "He forged the papers, so he's a criminal." Vinny's patience had clearly run out. "Karen, We know your car. You drive a white Lexus. We've run your plates countless times over your parking complaints. This isn't your car. Filing a false report is a crime." Karen's face strained of color. Then the fury returned. Cold and calculated, she glanced at me with a look that said, "You may have won this round, but the war isn't over." Without another word, she stormed home. The officers gave me an apologetic nod and left. Jane slipped her arm around my waist. "Well," she said with a half-smile. Jane smirked and said, "Well, that was entertaining." "Pretty sure she's after your car." "I'm starting to think so too," I replied, watching her front door slam shut. The sun dipped lower, throwing long shadows across the street. The quiet returned, but it wasn't the same calm as before. It carried weight, an unspoken tension. I glanced at my BMW gleaming under the garage lights and realized it had stopped being just a car. It had become a bull's-eye, and I knew, with an unsettling certainty, that Karen Klein had just declared war. The first real strike came after dark, and not with a bang, but with paper. A few days later, small white envelopes began appearing under my door handling official letters from the Rolling Gate Homeowners Association. Each one was a violation notice. Each one carried a fine. The first was for $50. The reason? A supposed quarter-inch excess in the height of a 3-square-inch patch of grass by the sidewalk, violating some obscure clause buried in Bylaw 7, subsection C, paragraph 4. I read it twice. Then I grabbed a ruler and checked every inch of grass I could find. Nothing, which made it almost genius. How do you fight something invisible? Jane found it hilarious. A quarter of an inch. What's she doing? Hiring a team of tiny inspectors? She laughed, then taped the notice to the fridge. We should frame this. I didn't laugh. To me, it was a calculated test. I paid the fine. He had no reason to give her more ammunition, but I also opened a manila folder, labeled it Karen, and filed the notice with a copy of the check. Soon came the second letter, this time for $75. The offense? Improper display of holiday decorations. The HOA rules stated seasonal DA copyright core must to be removed within 7 days of the holiday. My crime? A small Christmas wreath hanging on the inside of our front door in February. She must have spotted it while slipping the lawn notice under my handle. It was snooping, pure and simple. Jane's amusement faded. "All right, now it's getting creepy," she said, watching me file the second notice. "She runs on obsession," I told her. The third letter arrived a few days later. $100. Alleged violation: vehicle parked in driveway producing excessive glare. According to the notice, the professional wax job on my BMW created a public nuisance on sunny days, distracting drivers. That's when I realized this wasn't just harassment, it was performance art, a masterpiece of petty tyranny. More notices followed. Fined for leaving my garage door open longer than the HOA's 60-minute access window. Fined because a single roof shingle on the back side of my house looked slightly discolored. Fined because Jane's welcome motto, the one that read "Come back with a warranty," was deemed unneighborly and potentially litigious in tone. Every fine was more ridiculous than the last. 50, 75, 100. Each one paid in full, each one documented. My Karen file was turning into a novel. Outwardly, I stayed calm. I went to work, kept the lawn trimmed to her exact measurement, removed the offensive doormat, and played the role of the model resident. But inside, a cold knot had formed. This wasn't random nitpicking, it was a siege. She wanted to wear me down until I either broke or moved away. She thought I was just another neighbor she could corner and intimidate. She expected me to lose my temper, giving her the chance to brand me as unstable. Sometimes, I'd catch her watching. As I drove away, she'd be trimming her roses, her eyes locked on my car, her mouth curved into a smile that was anything but warm, the smile of a predator waiting for her prey to weaken. The neighbors had grown cautious around me. Their looks were part sympathy, part fear, as if I were already marked. It wasn't just me getting slapped with violations, but no one else was hit as hard. Eli, my elderly neighbor 2 doors down, received a notice for his garden gnome. The reason? According to the letter, the gnome's facial expression was deemed inappropriate and judgmental. Eli was heartbroken. He'd had that gnome for over 20 years. When I spoke to him one afternoon, he leaned in and whispered like a man afraid of being overheard, "She's a menace. Evan, I've never seen her like this before. Ever since she became president, it's been nothing but rules and fines. And she's got Henderson and Gable on the board that just rubber stamp everything she says. That was the piece I needed. She wasn't just overstepping as she locked down complete control. The board wasn't a governing body anymore, it was her echo chamber. One evening, Jane and I sat on the back porch with the growing stack of notices piled on the table between us. "What are we going to do?" she asked quietly. The humor in her voice was gone, replaced with exhaustion. "We can't keep living like this. It feels like we're prisoners in our own home." I looked at her, then at the folder stuffed with her absurd fines. My calm wasn't just temperament anymore, it was strategy. She wanted me to crack, to give her an excuse to escalate. I wasn't going to hand it to her. She wanted a fight, I'd give her own ear, but not her kind of fight. Mine would be quiet, methodical, and documented. "She's making mistakes," I told Jane, tapping the folder. "She's arrogant. She thinks no one's paying attention. Every move she makes is another piece of evidence." Jane's eyes sparked with the flicker of the old fire. "So what's the next move, General Cole?" I smiled faintly. "The next move is to watch her back." That night, long after Jane had gone to bed, I sat at my computer not scrolling through news or work emails, but researching lenses, resolution quality, night vision, storage capacity. The war of petty fines was about to shift into the war of surveillance. She thought she was the only one watching. She was wrong. Within days, we had cameras mounted, a doorbell, floodlight, and a couple hidden ones. 4 angles: driveway, front door, yard, street. Now I was the one observing. The first few days were uneventful. Mail deliveries, Eli walking his dog, Karen coming and going in her white Lexus. But on the third night, my phone pinged. Motion alert from the garage cam. I pulled up the feed. 11:47 p.m. The floodlight snapping on as Karen crouched with the tape measure, checking cracks in my driveway. A week later, another alert. This time, late afternoon, Karen stood in her own yard, binoculars aimed directly at my HOA broken bar. No, not the HOA at my car. She studied it like she was preparing a case file. Saved the clip. Evidence. The footage kept building. A Karen sliding a violation notice under my handle for unauthorized landscaping because Jane planted 2 rose bushes. Karen peering into our living room window after dark. Every clip was labeled, dated, logged. Jane watched some of it with me, her face a mix of fear and rage. "She's not right in the head, Evan." "This was never about the HOA rules," I said quietly. "It's always been about the car. The bylaws are just her weapon." Then came the one that made my blood run cold. Just past midnight, motion alert from the front doorbell camera. I opened the feed. An older, beat-up sedan idled in front of my house. Karen stepped out of her place and walked toward it. A large man got out, wearing a dark work jumpsuit. I'd never seen him before. They spoke for several minutes in the shadows, just far enough from the streetlights that the camera couldn't catch their expressions clearly, but their gestures told the story. Karen pointed at my house. She pointed at my garage. The man nodded. They shook hands. He got in his car and drove away. Karen lingered for a long moment, staring at my home with a satisfied look before slipping back inside. This wasn't petty harassment anymore. This was coordination, outside help, planning. I downloaded the footage immediately, backed it up twice, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. A midnight meeting. A man in a jumpsuit. A finger aimed at my garage. This wasn't attrition, it was preparation. And I had a sinking feeling I knew what was coming. 2 nights later, my phone vibrated on the nightstand at 2:13 a.m. Motion alert. Not from the doorbell, this time from the hidden garage camera. The camera feed was aimed straight at my BMW. I shot upright in bed, my heart pounding hard against my ribs. Jane stirred beside me. "What is it?" she mumbled, still half asleep. "Stay here," I whispered. My hands were already slick with sweat as I grabbed my phone. I pulled up the live feed, a grainy footage lit only by the pale glow slipping through the garage window. The main door was shut, but something was off. A thin strand of metal was sliding under it. I watched, holding my breath, As the wire hooked onto the emergency release handle, one quick yank and the lever clicked. The motorized track was disconnected. Whoever was out there knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't breaking in with noisy, they were working in silence. I swung my legs out of bed and crept to the window. Parting the blinds, a tow truck was backing into my driveway. Not a company truck, but an old, rusted one with no logo, just faded numbers on the door. Its amber lights rotated slowly, casting ghostly bands of color over my neighbor's house. That meeting earlier had been their planning stage. This was their follow-through. Two men climbed out, big, heavy set, wearing grimy coveralls. One was the same man I'd seen talking to Karen. Their movements were efficient, practiced. They knelt and began lifting the garage door by hand. The metal groaned as it rose, inch by inch, until the rear end of my BMW was exposed. My first impulse was to charge downstairs, to scream at them. But my mind overrode the urge. This needed strategy, evidence. Yelling would just get me hurt. My weapon wasn't brute force, it was the cameras and my phone. Jane was fully awake now, eyes wide in the dim light. "Call 911, I told her, my voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through me. "Tell them a theft is in progress. Tell them two men are stealing a car from inside my locked garage. Tell them I have it all on video." While she spoke to the dispatcher, I started recording the live feed separately, ensuring I had my own copy. The men were inside now. One slid into the driver's seat, locked, of course, but the alarm never sounded. He used the bypass tool, popped the door open, and began shifting the car into neutral. The other man unspooled a heavy tow chain from the truck. The metallic scrap of it dragging over the concrete was a sound that cut right into me, a signal my space was being violated. A cold, determined rage filled me. They thought I was asleep. They thought this was easy, just a quick grab with backing from a vindictive whole figure. They had underestimated me, mistaking patience for weakness. Jane's urgent voice carried in the background. "Yes, they're hooking it now. Please, send someone fast." On my phone screen, I watched the tow hook clank against the undercarriage of my car, searching for a point to latch. The harsh scrap when it locked in made every nerve in me tighten. I wanted to smash something, to shout, to physically tear them away, but I stayed still. The police would be here soon, and the evidence was undeniable. The winch engaged, chains going taut. The BMW jerked backward, its tires squealing in protest. They were actually doing it, pulling my car out of my own garage right in front of me. The sheer nerve of it was almost surreal. Karen must have promised them a hefty payout or convinced them there'd be no consequences. She likely told them I was a pushover who'd simply accept the loss. Another fatal miscalculation. My blood ran cold with resolve. My veins feel like they're buzzing. This is it. The point where things can't be taken back. They've stepped way past harassment and landed squarely in felony territory. And I've caught it all on camera. It's no longer a question of if they'll be caught, but whether the police will arrive before my car disappears for good. Then, faint at first, a siren cuts through the night, growing sharper and louder until it fills the street. Down in the driveway, the two men freeze mid-action. Their heads jerk up, eyes locking in sudden panic. They clearly didn't expect this. Someone told them it was a clean, authorized job. The man at the winch drops the control remote. The other abandons my BMW with the driver's door swinging open. They sprint toward the tow truck's cab, no intention of sticking around to explain. Too late. Two police cruisers whip around the corner, headlights blasting the tow truck in a white glare. Rex and Vinny are here, their patrol car lights splashing red and blue across the quiet street, turning it into a crime scene. From my window, I watched them step out, guns low but ready. "Police, show me your hands." Out of the truck. "Now." Rex's voice booms through the stillness. The men climb out slowly, hands raised high. They look cornered. They look foolish. Vinny slaps cuffs on them while Rex takes in the scene near the half-raised garage door, the tow cable still hooked to my BMW, the open car door, an open and shut attempted grand theft auto. I finally exhale, adrenaline draining, leaving me shaky. Jane places a hand on my shoulder. "They got them," she whispers. "They got the hired muscle," I correct. "The snake's still out there." And right on cue, a white Lexus SUV rolls in, and not a police vehicle. Out steps Karen Klein, silk robe over her pajamas, hair messy but face set in a polished mask of concern. She walks onto the scene like she owns it. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she announces brightly. "I called this in." Dispatch recorded 2 calls, hers and mine. The speed of the police response makes me almost laugh. The nerve of this woman is unbelievable. "You called this in, ma'am?" Rex asks, expression unreadable. "Yes," she replies, holding up a sheet of paper. "This tow was authorized by the Home Emergency Removal Order. The vehicle violates multiple bylaws and is a nuisance. The owner is hostile and uncooperative. We had to act." She's flipping the story, painting herself as the responsible one forced into drastic measures, and she's skilled at it. "Ma'am," Vinny says, stepping forward, "these men broke into a locked garage to remove the vehicle." "That's not a tow, that's burglary and attempted theft." "It was an emergency," she insists. "The rules are clear." That's my cue. I walk downstairs, step into the flashing lights, calm and phone in hand. "Officers," I say clearly, "I think I can clarify." Karen's head whips toward me, and for just a second, the mask drops a pure venom in her eyes. "This is the owner, Mr. Cole," Rex tells her. "He's the criminal." Karen shrieks, pointing at me. "Actually," I reply, raising my phone, "I have video of you meeting with one of these men 2 nights ago," pointing at my house. "Video of them breaking into my garage, and hours of footage of you trespassing, spying, and showing a very obvious, very illegal fixation on me and my property. Want to see it? I can airdrop it right now." Silence. Beautiful. Heavy silence. Karen's mouth works but nothing comes out. The tow truck drivers look at her like they've been betrayed. Rex and Vinny exchange a glance. "Yeah, now things have gotten interesting, Mr. Cole," Rex says, focusing on me. "Let's start from the top. First, confirm ownership." "Can you unlock it?" I click my key fob. The BMW's lights blink and the lock pops. "Pop the hood," Rex adds. I do, and Vinny shines a flashlight in, running a formal van check against the engine block, dashboard, and my insurance card. It's standard procedure, but also a deliberate display of real authority versus Karen's pretend kind. While Vinny works, Rex pulls me aside. "You've got all this on video?" "Everything," I confirm. "Saved and backed up." I moved toward Karen, the woman who had been orchestrating weeks of harassment. It all began the moment she spotted the car, and this was the grand finale she'd been working toward. Vinny completed his inspection. Everything checked out. Rex was officially registered to Mr. Cole, no doubts about it. Rex fixed his gaze on Karen, his voice low and sharp. "Karen, you're skating on a razor's edge yet, teetering between your role as HOA president and becoming an accomplice to multiple felonies. These 2 men are headed to jail, and they're claiming you hired them. We've got a homeowner with video evidence of a conspiracy. I'm giving you a warning, right here and now. I'll walk away. Go home. Stay away from Mr. Cole, his house, and his car. Do you understand?" Karen's hands trembled, and not from fear, but from rage. Her carefully laid plan had been shattered. She'd been exposed, humiliated. Her eyes locked on mine, burning with pure hatred, so strong it felt almost solid. She knew she couldn't win this round and not deny it, but the message in her stare was clear. She wasn't giving up the war. She climbed into her Lexus and roared off, tires screeching in protest. The tow truck was confiscated, and the 2 hired muscle were loaded into the back of a police cruiser. The neighborhood slowly settled back to normal, but I knew this victory was only temporary. A police warning is nothing more than ink on paper. It wouldn't stop someone like Karen Klenn. She wouldn't retreat, she'd escalate. She'd find a more subtle, legally disguised way to strike back. I had won the midnight battle, but the war still lay ahead. And as I stood in my driveway in the dead of night, it hit me I couldn't fight her alone. I needed allies. By the next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. The incident had already grown on legend. Some claimed I fought off a crew of professional car thieves. Others swore the HOA sent in a SWAT team. The truth was quieter, but far more dangerous. I had to control the narrative and gather reinforcements, and my solo operation wouldn't cut it anymore. First, I went to see Mr. Alvarez, a retired accountant and former HOA treasurer. Karen had ousted him years ago with the staged no-confidence vote, replacing him with her loyal ally, Mr. Henderson. Alvarez was sharp, precise, and carried a deep grudge. He opened his door before I could knock, his expression grim. "I saw what happened last night, Evan," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "I'm not surprised at it, only surprised it took her this long. I laid everything out for him: the fines, the surveillance, the late-night ambush, and the tow truck." I showed him the videos. His jaw tightened. "She's twisting the bylaws to suit her own agenda," he growled. "Her weakness has to be the money. A power like hers isn't cheap." He agreed to join me, determined to dig into the HOA's financial records and uncover whatever rot lay hidden. Next, I approached Miss Ito, the tech teacher who lived a few houses away. Young, sharp, and perpetually annoyed by Karen's petty rules, she'd once been fined for having a Wi-Fi signal too strong and leaking into public airspace. She sat in her backyard, grading papers on a tablet surrounded by smart sprinklers and solar lights. When I told her what happened, a sly smile curved her lips. "So the Queen's moved from petty tyrant to full-blown criminal. Classic villain arc." She was impressed by my camera setup and immediately went into strategy mode. "You need a digital case file encrypted, backed up in multiple places. We'll compile video, emails, and sworn statements from others she's targeted. If this ever hits court or even just a public home meeting, we'll bury her under irrefutable proof." She was Zena, my new chief technology officer and digital archivist. Finally, I turned to the most unexpected potential recruit at Iswan, a 20-something who rented the townhouse at the end of the street. I'd seen him around but never spoken to him. When he opened the door, he looked guarded. "Can I help you?" I showed him a still image from my tow truck footage. "I need to know who owns this truck." His face hardened. "Why?" "They tried to take my car out of my garage last night," I explained. He was silent for a long moment, glancing down the street toward Karen's house. "That smells towing," he said, bitterness in his tone. "I used to work for them. I quit last month." Mel takes special jobs for caution, no questions asked. He calls them a dispute resolutions. The puzzle pieces locked into place. Karen hadn't just called a random towing company.
"I finally met someone willing to talk." "Why did you walk away from the job?" I asked. "Because of things like this," he replied. "We once hauled away a guy's work van from right in front of his own apartment. He was a contractor. Every tool he owned was inside." Mel claimed the property manager told him it was abandoned, but it wasn't. The guy had just fallen 1 month behind on rent. The very next day, they sold off his van and everything in it. "I couldn't keep doing that." He looked straight into my eyes. "That HOA president, the blonde Onia, is trouble." She showed up at the tow yard a few weeks back, met Mel in person, and handed him a fat wad of cash as a deposit. "Would you be willing to testify?" "Sign a statement?" I asked. He hesitated. "Mel's dangerous." "So is she," I countered, "but together, we're stronger." After a pause, he gave a slow nod. "All right, I'm in. That woman needs to be stopped." That evening, our first war council took place in my living room. Me, Jane, Mr. Alvarez, Miss Edo, and Iswan. It felt like the beginning of a resistance movement. We had an auditor, a tech specialist, an inside informant, and me, the owner of the car she was after. Jane kept the coffee flowing and reminded us we weren't just defending a vehicle, but the right to live without harassment. Mr. Alvarez proposed a plan. "We need a thorough forensic audit. Let's start with the public financial reports she's required to release and look for anything suspicious." "Misto," he continued, "can you track down any emails or records of board votes, especially emergency votes?" Miss Edo flexed her fingers over her keyboard. "I'll set up a search algorithm to comb through the HOA portal for deleted files or hidden cash transactions. If there's a digital trail, I'll uncover it." "Diswan," I said, "find out exactly what happens to the illegally towed vehicles." "They end up at a shady auction near the airport," he explained. "They're sold fast for cash with sloppy title work." Our battle plan was clear: follow the money, expose the process, reveal the conspiracy. We spent hours at my dining table, now buried under stacks of bylaws, HOA newsletters, and printouts from my video archives. We weren't just victims anymore, we were investigators. A team. We studied the HOA bylaws, the same rules Karen used as her shield, but our goal was to uncover every way she'd violated them. We were turning her own weapon against her. By the time the meeting broke up, Hope had returned for the first time in weeks. Karen Klein might be cunning and ruthless, but she was just one person. driven by greed and ego. I looked at Miley as a united by coffee, shared injustice, and a burning will to reclaim our neighborhood. She had no idea what was coming. The deep dive began. My house became a command center. By day, I acted like everything was normal. By night, we followed the trails. Mr. Alvarez worked like a bloodhound, calculator in one hand and red pen in the other, combing through the hose-polished financial summaries, the ones meant to bore residents into ignoring them. But to him, they shouted deception. "Look at this," he said one night, jabbing at a line item. Community landscaping and beautification are budgeted at $40,000 for the year, yet she's reported $90,000 in expenses. And the vendor, Klein Garden Solutions, that's her maiden name, so she's basically paying herself to plant flowers. Jane asked. She's funneling $50,000 of our money into a shell company she controls, Mr. Alvarez clarified grimly. That's embezzlement. We'll need the actual bank statements to prove it. Meanwhile, Miss Edo was pulling digital threads. She found that the HOA's public meeting archive, managed by Karen's ally, Mr. Henderson, contained records from several emergency votes conducted entirely by email among the 3 board members. Henderson and Gable were technically within their rights under the bylaws, but only in genuine emergencies like a burst water main or severe storm damage. Karen, however, treated those powers like her personal ATM. She called emergency votes for anything she wanted. One such vote pushed through a massive landscaping budget. Another approved a $5,000 legal retainer for a law firm that, as far as anyone could tell, didn't even exist. Then Ms. Edo uncovered the real bombshell: an emergency vote, held just weeks ago, to quietly rewrite Bylaw 12, the section covering vehicle violations. The change granted the HOA president sole authority to label any vehicle a persistent nuisance and have it towed immediately, bypassing the usual 30-day warning. She changed the rules to target your car, I said, feeling cold anger rise in my chest. She did, Miss Edo confirmed. And she did it behind closed doors. It had been an email vote between her and her 2 loyal allies and no announcement to the community. No proper notice. That alone violated the notification clause in the bylaws, which required mailing any amendment to homeowners within a week. We had her on procedural violations and on financial misconduct. Now we just needed to tie her directly to the towed cars. That's where Deson came in. He knew the shadows of the illegal towing world. After a few days of calling old contacts, cashing in favors, and piecing together leads, he returned with a name: Route 7 Auto Auction. It's basically a legal-looking chop shop, Deson explained. Mel's Towing hauls the cars there, gets fake title paperwork from a crooked DMV contact, and the cars are sold for cash in days. The auction house gets a cut, Mel takes his share, and whoever ordered the tow gets a kickback. It was all there. Karen picked a target, justified the tow with her secret illegal amendment, hired Mel's shady outfit to seize the vehicle, and collected her payout after it was sold at the dirty auction. The homeowner was left with nothing but a bogus violation notice. This wasn't just petty bullying, it was an organized car theft ring bankrolled by HOA dues. The final proof came from an unexpected source: Eli, the neighbor with the infamous garden gnome. After hearing about our investigation, he showed up at my door clutching a stack of papers. "My sister's son works as a teller at the bank the HOA uses," he said, voice trembling with excitement. "He can't give you official records, but he marked down dates and amounts from the posted summaries." Later, our auditor obtained the official bank statements through a subpoena. Mr. Alvarez pored over them, cross-referencing with Deson's list of auction dates. The match was undeniable: large deposits from HOA funds, followed days later by cash withdrawals disguised as payments to a fake landscaping company, lining up perfectly with the chop shop sales. "We've got it," Mr. Alvarez whispered, almost reverently. "The fake votes to create the rules, the bogus fines to set up the tow, the theft itself, the shell company to launder the money, and the cash kickbacks at the end." For a long moment, we just sat there, absorbing the enormity of her scheme. Karen had built a self-contained empire of corruption in the middle of a quiet suburban neighborhood, and she'd gotten away with it because no one had ever dug this deep. "So, what's next?" Jane finally asked. "We go to the police," I said. "But not yet. She'll deny everything, lawyer up, and drag it into a long court fight. We need more something that will expose her publicly. In front of everyone she's fooled. We need a trap she can't wriggle out of. I already knew the perfect stage. The annual all-hands-home meeting. It was her grand moment, her version of a State of the Union. The room would be full, all eyes on her. We had the money trail. Now, we just needed to hand her the rope. The days leading up to the meeting became a whirlwind of covert preparation. We weren't just investigators anymore. We were producing a show, a one-act tragedy starring Karen Klen. Miss Ito became our technical director, assembling every shred of evidence into a single, devastating presentation. Videos of Karen snooping, tow truck footage, scans of phony violation notices, screenshots of secret email votes, marked dates from bank summaries, and the subpoenaed statements. It was more than a slideshow. It told a rising story of greed, abuse, and control. Mr. Alvarez acted as our script coach, drilling me to stay calm and measured, to let the evidence speak for itself. Keep it factual, Alvarez told me, pacing my living room. If you get angry, she'll use it to paint you as unstable. Think like a surgeon. Identify the problem, cut it out. No theatrics. D-Son was our linchpin. Nervous but determined, he drafted a detailed statement. His time at Mel's Towing, the cash handoffs, the illegal auctions, and the meeting he personally saw between Karen and his old boss. We had it notarized. A solid, undeniable testimony. Jane, ever the strategist, sat through my practice runs. Lead with the car, she advised. Everyone can picture that. The financials are important, but they're abstract. Hook them with something tangible, then show the rot underneath. She was right. The plan was simple. I'd wait for the new business segment of the home meeting at the part Karen hated but couldn't skip. I'd request time for a short presentation on community safety and financial transparency. Miss Ito would handle the tech from the back. Alvarez and D-Son would be in the front row, ready to confirm everything. When the night came, the clubhouse was standing room only. Karen had clearly stacked the audience with loyalists. The chatter was loud, confident. She stood at the podium in a sharp red dress, radiating control. Henderson and Gable flanked her like disinterested bodyguards. Smug and certain, she breezed through the agenda. Previous minutes, treasurer's report, a Henderson's polished fiction, then the landscaping update, essentially a self-congratulatory speech by Karen. I waited, steady, almost unnervingly calm. Finally, new business, she announced, already half dismissive. If there's nothing else, yeah, I have something, I said, rising. My voice carried, heads turned. Karen's smile tightened. Mr. Cole, she said smoothly, please be brief. I will, just a few minutes. I signaled to Miss Ito. The projector flickered on, a bright white square behind Karen's head. This isn't on the agenda, she objected, but the audience was interested now. This was something different from the usual home monotony. The first slide appeared, my blue BMW in full sunlight. This is my car, I said evenly. Some of you may have heard our HOA president believed it belonged to her. A low ripple of murmurs. I clicked to the next slide, a video of Karen in my driveway, shouting thief, and ordering someone to arrest that thief. The room went still. The audio was crystal clear. Gasps spread through the crowd. I ran through the photos of my so-called violations of the uncut grass, the holiday wreath, the polished tires. Laughter bubbled up in the room. It was ridiculous. But the mood shifted fast. The next slide showed Karen creeping around my property in the dead of night. The chuckles died instantly. Then came the clip of her in a hushed meeting with the tow truck driver. Silence. I moved to the grainy garage footage. Two men forcing their way in, the rattle of a chain dragging on concrete, my car jerking backward. A woman in the front row gasped and covered her mouth. This attempted theft, I said evenly, was approved in a so-called emergency vote, one no homeowner was ever told about. I pulled up an email Miss Ito had dug out of the records. Henderson, Gable, and Karen quietly voting to greenlight it. And now, I continued, we get to the real motive. The screen lit up with Mr. Alvarez's breakdown of the HOA books. Landscaping costs bloated beyond reason, steady payments to a company bearing Karen's maiden name, bank slips showing huge cash deposits. I could feel the shift in the air, neighbors glancing at Karen with confusion that hardened into suspicion, Then anger. These cash withdrawals, I said, line up exactly with the sale of other cars illegally taken from our community or sold off at Route 7 auto auction. I nodded to D-Swan. He stood, voice trembling but steady. I used to work for the tow company she hired. I saw her hand my boss cash, with my own eyes. The room erupted in shouts and demands. Karen's face was ashen. Her polished calm was gone. She knew her grip was slipping. In panic, she shoved past me, ripped the microphone from the podium, and tried to claw it back. Lies. All of it. Her voice blared through the speakers high, sharp, desperate. The confident president was gone. In her place was a cornered animal. This man, Evan Cole, has been trouble since he moved here. He flaunts that expensive car, disrespects our rules, our community, but the damage was done. Behind her, the video looped silently, the tow chain, the hook, the theft in progress. She jabbed a shaking finger toward me. The bylaws are clear. I have a duty to protect the appearance and property values of Rolling Gate. That means taking decisive action people like him can't comprehend. I stayed quiet. Alvarez had warned me give her the rope, she'll do the rest. From the front row, a woman who always brought cookies to HOA events stood. What about the landscaping company, Karen? Where did the money go? That was a legitimate business expense, she snapped, motioning at Henderson and Gable. The two shrank into their seats, eyes fixed on the floor. And the secret vote? Another voice called. Why didn't you tell us you changed the towing rules? It was an emergency, she shrieked. We had to act quickly to deal with the problem. He was the problem. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. The presentation had armed them, and now the questions came rapid fire. Karen's answers grew more frantic by the second. She's losing, and she knows it. Then comes the fatal slip, the one mistake she can never undo. In her fury and desperation to justify herself, she forgets the microphone is live, forgets that dozens of ears are hanging on her every word, and forgets everything except her own self-righteous anger. Her voice cracks as she shouts, "You people just don't get it. You have no idea what it takes to keep a community like this running. The sacrifices, the tough calls. That car, that beautiful car, doesn't belong with someone who doesn't respect our way of life. I was going to make an example out of him. It was the only way. I was going to take that car and sell it myself to make up for the losses he's caused with his defiance." The room freezes. Dead silence follows. The hot mic has captured an unambiguous confession. She didn't just say she was planning to have it towed. She openly admitted she intended to take it and sell it herself. Her anger drains in an instant, replaced by the dawning horror of what she's done. She stares at the microphone in her hand as if it has just bitten her. From the back of the room comes the sound of heavy boots and the crackle of a radio. Officers Rex and Vinny step inside. I had quietly called the non-emergency line beforehand, letting them know I'd be presenting evidence of felony crimes and that their presence might be wise. They've been listening for the past several minutes. Their footsteps are slow and deliberate as the crowd parts for them. They don't glance at me or anyone else. Their eyes are fixed on Karen Klen. Her face turns ghostly pale. Rex reaches the podium, gently takes the microphone from her limp hand, and sets it down. Then, with a quiet but final click, he pulls out a pair of handcuffs. The metallic snap of the first cuff closing around her wrist seems to echo through the room. "Karen Klen," Rex says in a steady, formal voice, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand theft auto, embezzlement, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Vinny escorts her out, expressionless. The room erupts, not with anger, but with a wave of relief. Amid the chaos, Mr. Alvarez climbs onto the stage and shouts, "Motion to recall the entire board of directors." A dozen voices immediately second it. "All in favor?" he calls, and the resounding roar nearly shakes the building. Henderson and Gable vanish through a side door before the vote is even counted. The reign is over. The kingdom has fallen. The queen is dethroned. Justice, it turns out, sounds like handcuffs snapping shut. Instead of collapsing into disorder, the neighborhood rallies. That very night, an interim board is formed. Mr. Alvarez, the man she tried to silence, is voted in as temporary president. Miss Edo takes over communications, and even Eli, the garden gnome devotee, gets a seat at the table as the voice of the silent majority. Their first move is to bring in a truly independent auditor. What they uncover is even worse than expected: fake landscaping companies, phony legal retainers, sham maintenance contracts, and a slush fund used for luxury trips and personal indulgences. The police expand the case, and soon Henderson and Gable are arrested as well. They quickly agree to cooperate, trading information for lighter sentences. We then turn to rewriting the rules. Town halls are held out on the community green, where we go through every bylaw as equals a neighbors, not rulers and subjects. Ridiculous rules are cut. No more fines for grass height measured in millimeters. No more regulations about the emotional state of garden gnomes. Transparency becomes the standard. All board votes are public. Meeting minutes must be posted online within 24 hours, and no single board member can approve spending over $500. Towing rules are rewritten entirely, now only allowed for abandoned or hazardous vehicles, with a 48-hour written notice posted on the car and a majority board vote required. We strip away every weapon Karen once wielded. The rules we'd fought so hard to rewrite were no longer weapons, they'd become the foundation of a fair, functional community. My own legal battle ran on a separate but rapid track. I filed a civil lawsuit against Karen for harassment, emotional distress, and the attempted theft of my car. I also sought compensation for the physical damage at the deep gouges left on the undercarriage where the tow hook had been carelessly attached. The evidence against her was airtight. My recorded videos, the police report, Deshawn's testimony. The judge didn't just grant me financial damages to cover repairs and legal fees, he went further. He issued a permanent injunction barring her from serving on any HOA board for the next decade and placed her under court-supervised probation. In one swift ruling, he stripped her of the thing she craved most, the power to control other people. Life in the neighborhood began to shift. The tension that once lingered in the air dissolved. People stopped avoiding eye contact and started chatting over fences again. Eli's garden gnome got a fresh, cheerful coat of paint and a tiny Medal of Honor handcrafted by Jane. Mr. Alvarez, working with an attorney, filed a class-action lawsuit on behalf of the HOA to recover the funds Karen had siphoned away. Slowly but surely, the stolen money trickled back. Restitution checks found their way into the mailboxes of every homeowner she had targeted with her fine for-profit racket. One sunny afternoon, my own check arrived. The amount wasn't enormous, but it felt like treasure, a tangible symbol of victory. On a quiet Saturday, I was in the driveway polishing the BMW. The midnight blue paint gleamed, the once damaged frame fully repaired. It wasn't a Target anymore, just a car again. A beautiful machine I could enjoy without fear. The street around me was peaceful, not the tense silence we'd lived with before, but a warm, comfortable quiet, colored by the laughter of children and the distant hum of lawnmowers. Karen Clen's shadow had finally faded from our lives. Jane stepped outside with 2 glasses of lemonade, handing me one before leaning casually against the car. She gazed down the street and said, "You know a broken bar?" You answered the question. "What question?" I asked. "How far a man will go to protect what's his," she replied with a small smile. "Turns out it's as far as it takes, all the way to a packed community meeting with a projector and a plan." I looked at my house, my wife, my car, and the quiet street beyond. This ain't not the possessions themselves, but the right to enjoy them in peace. It was what I had been defending all along. I slipped my arm around Jane. "I had a good team," I said. Pressing the button on the garage wall, I watched the door hum its way down. It wasn't the curtain drop of a drama anymore, just the door of a home closing at last. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's simply the quiet return of normal life.